Check, check. Some sound check. Check. Sounds like
Hey,
Hey,
Tony.
buddy.
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good, I see.
Nice to see you too. Welcome back. Long time no see.
Dr. Hart.
Yeah.
Yeah, not last meeting.
Oh.
I do when I have to.
I know.
Jim, do you want a picture or anything like that?
Oh, perfect.
Before we have to, would you like that? Would you like that? We can recess and.
We can reassess.
And take a picture?
Sure. I mean, that's what you do for the parents, right?
Yeah. Cute flowers.
Sweet. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Reddington Township Board of Education meeting. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act and is open to the media and the public. Notices were duly posted and the meeting was advertised in the Hunterdon County Democrat and Courier News. Formal action may be taken. Maybe get a roll call.
Mr. Pinto.
Here.
Mrs. Fiore.
Here.
Mr. Lopes.
Here.
Mrs. Menser.
Here.
Mr. Peach.
Here.
Mrs. Pogorski.
Here.
Ms. Ryan. Ms. Wolf.
Here.
Dr. Sosiel.
Here. Can we stand for this flag salute, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. Parker, do you have the superintendent's report?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. And I'd like to take an opportunity to wish everybody a very happy holiday and a happy new year as well. This is our last board meeting of the 2024 year, not the school year, because we got 2025 coming into it, but the end of 2024. So a happy and healthy new year to everyone. Tonight, we are going to share some information about an upcoming public referendum vote that we are in conversations about at the board level and the community level. Last week, when we did the referendum community forum, we set out 3 goals for members of our community. First, we wanted to learn more about what a bond referendum is. We talked about what it means for a school district to have debt, what does it mean for that debt to be expiring, and how can the district use this for future planning. Second, we wanted to ensure members of our community had input on that future planning. And lastly, we sought to generate excitement and support for the future of our schools. We had about, I would say, 14 overall attendees, mostly virtual online, a couple of folks in the public during our community forum last week. But we'd like to do the same with you tonight as Board of Education members. Most critically, as board members, we want to ensure that you have a clear picture of what a referendum means for your decision-making moving forward. So we have some guest presenters with us tonight. Last week, we had these same presenters. We're short a few tonight, but of course, I'll introduce everybody. And in a moment, I'll turn it over to Tony. So Jason will speak tonight a little bit about referendum. Everybody knows Jason, our business administrator. Don Race presented at the community forum. He was there last week with us. He is our facilities manager, and he really is on the ground floor when it comes to all matters of our facilities and knowing what projects are really critical for the district. Tony Salamini is our bond counsel, and he'll present in a moment. And our architect of record is Seven Brino Architects, and both Rita and Kevin were at the community forum last week. but Kevin is here tonight to talk with you all about his role in our referendum. So at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Tony. Take it from here, and here's the clicker. Just click that button.
Thanks, Dr.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. So last week was very hard to present, I'm not gonna lie, because there's only 2 people in the audience. So we were staring at empty chairs and the screen, so I'm so happy to see people. I'm very excited, so it should be much easier tonight. My role here tonight, I'm the district's bond counsel, and our role is to make sure that all the legal requirements of a proposed referendum are met, and also to provide you some information of the referendum process, why school districts go towards a referendum, and answer any questions about the process. First of all, a referendum is a public vote to authorize a school district to borrow money to do certain capital projects. And the reason why school districts do public referendum is because you have 2 budgets for a school district. You have your general fund budget, which is for all your current fund expenses, and that's capped by your 2% tax levy cap. And then you have a debt service fund. And the only way you can get a payment in your debt service fund prior to recent legislation is if you had a public approved referendum. Once you have a public approved referendum, those payments that pay the debt on the loan, which is the bond, is in your debt service fund. So it doesn't impact your 2% tax levy cap. That's why historically a lot of districts, and you've probably seen locally and throughout the state, a lot of districts have been doing referendum in the last couple of years, because as the squeeze on that general fund becomes harder and harder for districts to budget anything to address long-term capital projects, districts have to go out and borrow money. And as a district, you can't just walk into a bank and take out a loan. You need the authorization of the public through a voter-approved referendum. We talked about, in my introduction, I talked about why a bond referendum. One of the huge advantages for a school district to do a referendum is you get a thing called debt service aid if a project is eligible for aid. Now, your architect will talk to you a little bit about eligibility and ineligibility, but basically, any renovations you do, for the most part, are eligible for aid. Renovations consist of a new roof, new windows, redoing your bathrooms, redoing your HVAC. Any of those projects are eligible for aid. And the actual cost of those items are eligible for up to 40% debt service aid. Meaning if a roof costs you $1 million, you can get debt service aid of up to 40% on that $1 million, so $400,000 towards the cost of that $1 million roof, and you get 40% of the interest associated with borrowing that money for the roof. Whereas if you, in your capital reserve or in your general fund budget, or if you financed it through a lease in your budget, you, the residents, would be responsible for the whole $1 million and any cost. That's why referendum, besides getting the cost out of your general fund and putting it in the debt service fund, this debt service aid is extremely important to school districts. Now, full disclosure, once your architect submits project applications, they'll come back and say they're 40% eligible. Since 2011, the state has only been funding 85% of that. So when we go through the process and you see the tax impact analysis that your financial advisor runs, they're only going to show you getting 34%. So anytime you see a financial analysis, they've already taken that deduction into consideration. Now, potentially down the road, you might get that money back, but the financial advisor's projections that they always run are the most conservative. There are 5 dates throughout the year you can do a referendum. If you have a special election, it's either September, December, January, March, or you can ask for a question at the annual election. And we are assuming for this discussion, and the date we've been targeting is tentatively September of 2025. And the reason for that is, and one of the big considerations for your district is, you have debt falling off. So currently, on a budgetary basis, your district pays about $2 million in that debt service budget. That falls off in 2022. And so because of the good planning of your superintendent and business administrator, they've been proactively talking to your financial advisor and saying, hey, how much can we borrow by still keeping those taxes level. And the number that the financial advisor came up with was a little over $40 million. So potentially, you could do, according to their analysis, a $40.3 million referendum with all of their assumptions, assuming all those projects are eligible for the aid we spoke about, and your taxes would stay flat with a public referendum. So obviously, any referendum lower than $40 million, you could actually do those projects and have a reduction in your debt service line item. And obviously, any cost higher than that would be an increase. Currently, just so you know, that equates to about, your average taxpayer is paying about $271 of their taxes goes towards that debt service item. So if your debt fell away completely, everyone's taxes would go down about $271. But that's why this is a really great opportunity for your district to consider a referendum at this time, because you could address up to $40 million worth of potential projects and everybody's taxes would remain flat. The other things we also look at when we come to a district is we look at a district's borrowing capacity. And usually the borrowing capacity kind of tells us a story about the district. Your total borrowing capacity based on last year's ACFR was $104 million, and you had about $7 million worth of outstanding debt. So you could borrow, think about your credit line in your own personal life, about $97 million. So you have about $97 million worth of available borrowing capacity that you guys could actually borrow funds for. The other thing we look at, everyone's worried about inflation, everyone's worried about high interest. These bonds will be issued on a tax exempt basis, so the interest is exempt from both federal and state income taxes. If you issued a bond issue now for 20 years, you would be about 3.7%. So the borrowing rates for tax exempt municipal bonds are still historically, it's not like you or I getting a mortgage or a car loan. And then conversely, it's also a pretty good time because usually these projects take a few years to build. So you borrow the money today, you can invest it pretty much at the same rate that you're borrowing. So that first couple of years, you probably will be kind of, the interest expense and the interest you earn will kind of be offset. Next, I am going to turn the presentation over to Jason, but I'm here to answer any questions you guys have once we go through the presentation.
Thank you, Tony. So Tony articulated that the board's been looking at a potential referendum since early 2024. We knew our debt was expiring in 2027. So that's our last debt payment. And that debt represents money that was borrowed about 20 years prior to that on projects that the board had done at that time to cover things that the district may need that you now see and are using and the students are using. So in July and August, we were talking in the Finance Committee on whether or not we potentially want to go out for a bond referendum and let the voters vote on that in public, potentially for September of 2025. Over the past 10 years, we have been doing a lot of capital projects in-house, which most of you on the board have been voting for. We've done well over $20 million worth of projects through our own reserves. And that's through prudent fiscal planning that the Finance Committee has done. And our reserves, because of all the spending that we've been doing and redoing our roofs and redoing things that the staff need in-house, our reserves are lower than normal. We're a little lower than $1 million in reserves right now. So it's an opportune time for us to be going out for a referendum because our capital reserves and balances are lower. And at the same time, our debt is falling off. So the board, and through the Finance Committee, authorized us to look into this, which is why we're having a presentation tonight. So what have we done since the board allowed us to do that in July and August? Well, Dr. Hart and I went around and met with everyone at the building level. So we met with about 350 staff members over the period of September. We went to each and every building. We gave a presentation, solicited feedback, because we wanted to know what potential projects the teachers want to have in their buildings. What do they need over the next 20 years? And obviously, we're gonna have our architect and bond counsel and our facilities look at things that are structurally necessary. But we also wanna know what is needed in education for the next 20 years and how could we develop that into a referendum. So we gathered all those ideas. We also went to the administration at leadership meetings. We had a retreat and talked about this then. Got some ideas from the administration. Most recently, we've been going around and talking to critical stakeholder groups. So we've met with HSA, we've met with union leadership. We also met with town council and Township of Readington. We've met with police, we've met with fire, we've met with EMS and OEM. So we've met with a lot of different groups that have direct stake in the public schools. That's what we did in October and got their feedback, and some great ideas came out of that, which we've created a list of all of those ideas. So every idea that's been provided at any of those meetings or sent to myself or anyone is on a list. And since then, I don't want to steal Kevin's thunder, but he's done some walkthroughs, which he'll talk about, to help cost out those projects as well as go into the needs, HVAC, paving, roof. What is going to fail potentially in the next 10 years? And will we have enough money to do that? One roof section could be $1 million. To replace this roof took $3.5 million. So with reserves below $1 million right now, you know, it would be challenging to do larger scale projects. We most recently had an open public forum, which went very well, and we got some ideas from that, which are also on the list. And we encourage more ideas because we're really updating our long-range facilities plan. So anything that doesn't make it into the referendum will also go into a 5-year long-range facilities plan, which is required by the state. And that will be prioritized in years 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, to make sure that we are planning for the long-term future. And if we can't accomplish it through the referendum, we might be able to accomplish it through reserves. We might be able to go out and get a grant to fund things like that. And the board has approved a ton of grants. We've gotten well over $1 million in grants in the past several years alone. We've done the public forum. We're tonight representing a board meeting. What is going to happen after this? We are going to go into committee meetings to discuss the referendum at length and what projects potentially could be in there. And at some point, the board is going to have to vote. Right now on our timeline, we're shooting for the vote in February because there needs to be enough time to do paperwork to submit to the state in order to make it onto a public ballot at the polling location in September. If more time is needed, the vote in public wouldn't happen in September, it would happen on another date, which was highlighted previously. The most important thing that we did was stakeholder collaboration, which is also why we're here. We tried to meet with every single person that we could meet with that has a stake in the game, as well as the general public, because this impacts house values, it impacts who wants to move here, it impacts everything that happens. About 30 to 40% of the people in town have children in school. So a large degree of that population we have met with, as well as people in the township who represent more than that. So we probably met with about stakeholders of about 50% in town. We got some from the public forum as well, but we're hoping to get some more over the next month or two. But right now what's going on is architect walkthroughs. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Sedembrino to talk more about architect.
Thank you, Jason. I think between Jason and Tony, Dr. Hart, I don't know I have much left to say. But good evening. Rita this evening is actually at our kids' jazz concert, 8th grade jazz concert, so we split up tonight. But for this evening, so Jason has described the process the administration has taken to get the start of a list, meet with all stakeholders, and begin a very impactful list with regard to program needs. And that does two things. It integrates, obviously, the board, the community, and all the stakeholders with regard to advancing the need and the want for the referendum. And Jason and Tony also talked about architect walkthroughs. So now that we have the start of a list from the administration and from all 4 schools and all the stakeholders that Jason mentioned, that list doesn't have any costs to it, right? So one of the things that we need to do as we walk through the schools, we will begin to scope those projects. What does that mean? So we will apply project costs to those. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, about an hour and a half, Jason. So we're going to start to apply project costs to those projects that we've been provided by the administration so that we can accurately account for those costs and can start to give the board decision points and decision matrices, right? So those projects have been identified. We are going to scope or cost those projects, and then we're going to offer our recommendations with regard to priorities, meet with the administration, meet with the finance committee, and then move those forward with regard to the priorities of those projects. Now, secondarily, our office and our engineer's office are also walking through all the schools, and we're identifying need-based projects. Those are not the fun and sexy projects. Those are the projects like window replacement, toilet room upgrades, corridor door replacements, floor replacements, lighting replacements,
Boilers.
Boilers, HVAC units, unit ventilators. Some of your unit ventilators are a little on the old side. So we need to take a look at that. So our engineer has been through the schools as well with Mr. Race, and he has identified a list of those projects as well. Those projects he hasn't forwarded to me yet, they'll be coming to me this week. And our engineer and all our office will begin to scope those projects as well. What do those projects cost? Okay? And we'll do this on a per school basis. In all of these projects, whether it's as simple as a door replacement or lighting, ceiling replacement, flooring replacement, roof replacement, as Jason mentioned, on a per school basis, we will scope them. We will base them on today's costs. Now you're going to say, wait a second, you're establishing today's costs. How do we make sure we have enough money in the future if the referendum were to pass? So with that, we can only value it on today's costs. So in order to project the cost that you're going to need in the future, should the referendum pass on the projected date, we are including something called escalation at about 6 to 8% per year. We're including a project contingency at about 8 to 10% for renovations, and we're including all the soft costs of the fees. Okay, so the cost that Tony talked about at $1 million for a roof, I could actually say it might be better than that, right? So when you look at roofing costs at anywhere from $50 to $60 a square foot, those are hard costs, or the costs for the contractor to come out and do the work. When we budget these projects, we budget project costs, which are both hard and soft costs, because you only build with project costs. What I'll bring to your attention is, with regard to the funding, you get funded in 40% gross, which is 34%, 40% gross, 34% net, based on project costs. So your funding includes all soft costs associated with systemic capital upgrades. It's important to understand that. So one-off projects, one-off capital improvement projects are not typically funded. Systemic capital upgrades, windows, doors, roofs, floors, ceilings are funded at a gross rate of 40%, because that's important to understand. So the majority of the projects that we're looking at, both in terms of the ones we've been provided by the district and the ones that we are now in the process of identifying, will most likely be funded at a 40% gross rate of project cost, which is good to know, right? So once we generate the list of all projects, and again, it's not the projects that we only think you need, but it's also the projects that you want. It's a combination of needs and wants. All will be scoped. All will have, we'll make recommendations as to when we think you need it, sooner or later, and all will be prioritized, and then we'll sit with finance committee, with the administration, and you're going to start to pare down, if you will, our list of projects, because most definitely the total aggregate list of projects will exceed some of the numbers that Tony mentioned earlier today, and I know they will. So you will be faced with the task of looking at, we'll make some recommendations to you, but you will make those decisions with regard to what is in that referendum, and we're going to help you prioritize that, but ultimately we're going to come to you for your decisions on that, what goes into that. Now, in addition to the funding, the projects need to be submitted to the Department of Education on a per school basis 6 months prior to the referendum. You say, what do they need 6 months for? Part of it is statutory with regard to notice for the clerk's office and so forth. The rest, I think, is understaffing at the Department of Education. Regardless, we will make sure we get it in 6 months prior, which is the end of March. this year for a projected September 2025 referendum. Okay? So our office and our engineer's office does need about 2 months, a month and a half to 2 months, to generate all the required paperwork for submission to the Department of Education. We've done this numerous times before, so we need a little less time for capital projects, a little more time for other projects, but we figure about a month and a half to 2 months is adequate from when the board makes a decision as far as what is in that referendum. Okay? And then we'll go out to a referendum vote as early as September of 25. So right now we're in the course of identifying all of the projects. We will scope them, we'll attach dollars to it, project costs, and we will make recommendations as far as priorities, and then we'll start having the meetings with administration and finance committee to understand what your choices are to ultimately be packaged in this referendum. Jason? That wasn't too long.
That's perfect. So next steps, we talked about it. Kevin is going to start developing paperwork, but really he needs the Board of Education to make decisions. So I want you guys to be thinking about during winter break, what you would want to see potentially in a referendum, and the committees will be reviewing that in January in detail, likely multiple meetings to be able to decide what's in that. Eventually, the board will have the board resolution to vote upon what will be included in a potential referendum to be able for Kevin to send things to the state. Once that occurs, we'll be talking to the public again about what made it into the referendum, what didn't, and generating excitement relating to it. Come down to public vote. That will right now occur in September, but you have plenty of opportunities to push that to a different date. But ultimately, the taxpayers have to vote upon it. And there's many ways to structure that, so the committee will also be looking at that. But the public will have to vote on what we decide how to put it in there. After it passes, there'll probably be some construction immediately with short-term, smaller things. But a lot of construction will take 2 or 3 years to do. So things that people see and we talk about now, you may not see constructed until 2027, 2028. You might see things in 2026. So it really depends on if it's a large project or not. How do you learn more? So we have a referendum website. It's on the quick links side of our homepage. And there's a lot of different ways to contact. We have emails, phone numbers. We've gotten a lot of emails, and I've gotten a few phone calls, but we've met with well over 400 people to date. So we've gotten a ton of ideas and some great dialogue, great conversations. And now it is the Board of Ed and Public's turn to ask questions. And Kevin and Tony are here to answer any questions you may have. So I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Question about the, just a question about choosing September as the time for the vote. Would it be that people are going to the normal polling locations, or is it a different type of vote than?
So generally speaking, every county does it a little differently, but generally speaking, you use the same polling locations that you normally vote at. So if you normally vote at the firehouse, that usually stays consistent. What the Board of Ed will decide later on is what time the election is. Special elections have to stay open until 8 o'clock. They can open as early as 6 o'clock a.m., but up to as late as 4 p.m. So the board would decide that as we get closer to the.
I guess my concern is that voting, the participation rate is very low, especially like on primaries or off year, or I mean, not the presidential, that gets a lot of attention, but all the rest. What's the likelihood that, you saw how many people showed up to the meeting last week. I'm afraid that we're gonna have, 10 people deciding on a referendum because people aren't gonna be voting. Is there anything we can do? Like, why wouldn't we do it in November when the regular election is done, just to be able to get?
So in terms of passage, I think the passage rate for September elections for the last 10 years has been about 88%, somewhere around there. So the passage rate is pretty high. And it's really about educating your community and really providing information forums like this. You guys are starting very early. to be honest with you. Most school districts don't do any public information for a September referendum this early. I have 12 or so March referendum, and they're just adopting their question next week, and most of them are starting their public outreach now for March. So you guys are well ahead and doing a good job of educating your community and kind of getting out in front of it. The ultimate selection date is up to you guys. Most people, the theory behind picking a special election date is because then the voters can concentrate on the actual school project and politics don't get involved. A lot of times people don't want to mix the two. It also gives you a little bit more time to, for Kevin to go out for summer projects or any projects, give you another 2 months, for the bidding and stuff to get out ahead. So that's another kind of advantage. But a lot of people just don't want to mix the local politics or national politics with the school project.
Who pays for the actual election?
You guys pay for the actual election.
So it comes out of our budgets?
Yeah, and that's,
On the election?
so Jason will have to budget that in your general fund. However, if the referendum approves, Kevin will have that in that soft cost that he spoke about. So that's eligible for debt service aid. And then if the referendum passes and you issue debt, you can take that portion of the bond proceeds and reimburse your general fund for any money you spend. So you're basically at risk. If it fails, you pay. If it passes, Jason can reimburse himself with the bond proceeds.
We still pay, we just pay out of it for fun.
You're in pay with.
Thank you.
You said the passage rate is like 80% for non-November? What's it for November?
Similar. Historically, I think most people have stayed away from November. I was surprised. I had 3 referendums this November, and they all passed, which I think is kind of unique. Generally speaking, if you have a non-controversial school election, at a special election date, about 13% of your voters come out and vote. So you need 6.5% plus 1 voter to say yes. You probably had 75, 80% of your community vote in November, which means you have to have 40% plus 1 vote yes.
Any other questions?
I have a question. How does it work? Let's say we approve $40 million. How does the money get distributed? Like, do you get the lump sum? Because I know some projects can take 3, 4, 5 years. I'm just curious how that works.
So what the public would be authorizing is let's just say you did 40 million. They'd be authorizing you to borrow $40 million to do a certain set of projects that you authorize Kevin to submit to the DOE. Then the board will decide how to actually borrow that money. And you would work with your financial advisor, and they would make a recommendation. Hey, we're going to do $10 million worth of projects this year. Are we just going to borrow $10 million and not borrow the rest of it? Currently, what most financial advisors are advising, because of the pretty low borrowing rate and the high reinvestment rate, to borrow it all at once. So it takes the market risk out, and you kind of offset your interest expense with the interest earnings for that first couple of years anyway, while that 2-year build out is coming. But that's a recommendation that'll come kind of later on, and if the market changes, you maybe only borrow, what you need for that first summer and what have you. But we also don't like to do that because we don't like to get paid twice or 3 times. Because every time you do a bond issue, you have to pay the professionals. So if we can do it once, you only pay us once as opposed to paying us. There has to be a real good economic reason to do that. Otherwise, we're going to recommend you to.
Got it.
Any other questions? Thank you both for coming, and thank you for this meeting.
To continue my superintendent's report tonight, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will mention to the board and to members of the public that we're in active conversations as a board in terms of the referendum, so this isn't the last that we are going to be talking about. So any other questions that pop up between now and February or March, when we have to make a final decision, and even September's vote, those questions will be answered in more public forums and more communication. So we're in the beginning stages, but as Tony said, we're starting early as well. So thank you. The second part of my superintendent's report tonight is to say farewell to Board of Education members who have served alongside all of us for the past several years. These Board of Education members have served faithfully and thoughtfully over the past many years, and we'd like to recognize some of their achievements. Randy Peach was elected to the board and began his term in January of 2022. He's been a member of the Negotiations Committee in 2022, although he was fortunate because we did not have any active bargaining going on at the time. He served on the Policy Committee, the EdTech Committee, and the Finance Facilities Committee over his 3 years on the board, and eventually became the chair of the Policy Committee. Randy is known for his thoughtful approach to board issues and his always comprehensive meeting minutes reported out to the board each month. I'm sure he'll enjoy more time so that he can go to Long Beach Island and go skiing in Vermont. I'd like to say, Randy, thank you for your service to the board, and you will be missed. We have little certificates for you, no checks, sorry. Jennifer Wolf was also elected to the board and began her term in January of 2022. She served as a member of the Personnel Committee, the Policy and Communications Committee, and the EdTech Committee, and HSA representative. She was often called upon to be part of the be a sick bank trustee and serve on alternate committee meetings many times. Jen also served as the chair of the Personnel Committee and the vice president of the board in the year 2024. Jen attended many New Jersey School Board Association workshops as well as county meetings, and eventually this led her to receive the Certified New Board Member recognition last year, an honor that she received at a county board meeting. Jen, thank you for your service to the board, and with 2 children still in the district, I sincerely hope I will be seeing you at many school and community events in the future. Thank you. Camille Cerciello was appointed to the Board of Education in January of 2021, serving 1 year of a term until she was reelected and began her first full 3-year term in January of 2022. Camille served on the Personnel Committee, Negotiations Committee, and Finance Facilities Committee. She was the chair of both the Finance Committee and the Negotiations Committee, where she successfully led negotiations with the RTAA. And she was called upon many times to be a sick bank trustee. Camille served as vice president of the board in 2022 and 2023 and was elected president of the board in 2024. Camille also served the board by participating in the RMS vice principal search along with me and Mr. Charleston. Some may or may not know that Camille has a doctorate in education and she's an educational leader. Her strong background in education has certainly served the board well. Camille, thank you for your leadership, your friendship, and your service to the board these past 4 years. Thank you. Everyone, thank you so much. The service to the board is completely voluntary. So just know as you're coming in for next month, completely voluntary, and it can often be a lot of work and a lot of work behind the scenes that many members of the public may not know. So I very much appreciate all of your contributions to the board, all of the countless hours that you put in serving the students of Reddington, because that's really why we're all here. You have all served very thoughtfully, faithfully, consistently, and I will miss you. So thank you very, very much.
Teachers do.
Teachers do. You know,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. At this time, if it's okay with you, Dr. Cerciello, we'll take a quick 5-minute recess. Say goodbye real quick. We'll finish our meeting, and if anybody would like to stay or go, they certainly can, but thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's gotta get the
Yeah, you're welcome to. Go ahead, Barney.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You get to the professional. Enjoy your night, Kevin.
Jim and I are like, we're gonna go away, we're gonna figure out somewhere to go. Thank you.
You can, yeah, so, well, in the party, putting in like a money market type of thing, you know, but that's allowable for government agents, it's all regulated, so like, it has to be like risk impossible. So. Borrowing rate is 3%. So like, and I think the interest we're getting right now is like 4 or 5%. So if things work out, we'd actually make money. Yeah, I mean, it's really a state giving us 34% is where it's at. And it's really ridiculous. I mean, if you're issuing my kid, I feel bad when in public forum I said I voted against North Carolina vote referendum 3 times. They had 3 different times. I use the referendum all the time with my kids because they in the turf field. North Carolina is all the time turf field. So it's like, you know, short-sighted, but you know, it depends on the community.
Totally are, like this, our life is like, they like, they sign up window.
The project list has to be really considered heavily.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
And then it's just as
when we were talking about who should do it, and finance is almost doing like 90%.
They're like, yes, like they're all sitting out on the counter right now. They're trying to have the other friend. But parents are like, and I'm like,
You have no idea. Union prevailing wage.
yeah.
Not good. So, good example, Tim Charleston's grant. He was shocked. And I'm like, no, that's a pretty good quote. It was like, I don't want to say it, 7 to 10 times the cost. It was like when you and I do at a kitchen, 7 times the amount, which is insane.
Yeah, because they're one. Oh, they're all. Probably one professor now. Yeah.
That's what happens here. Same thing. Plagiarism is notorious. It's like 20% locked on the head, and they just subcontract. That's very common.
And
Yeah.
please bring it. We're all bringing our insurance. Yeah, he's like, great. Yes, 5 people. Yeah, well, they had somebody else like when he played in the show.
Thank you for that. That was very nice.
You're very welcome.
Yes.
And Camille? Yes. It's gonna be a lot less projects than. But we already started looking at the list and it's like. Cafeteria or some things that are on the list. There's like.
Now it's like, you know, whatever, so she's got like.
I'd say at least half of the list.
And it's,
In the next 3 or 4 years. We gotta make a referendum. Like with the referendum now, they're like using different avenues. Like which is the JCP now, KCNG. Some of the stuff on the list, they'll do for us for like 80%. Exactly. So it's like, you know, there's ways to which the board has done in the past. That's how we put LED lights in, right out here. We'll see, I mean.
Maybe we should, December final meeting, we should do something where like,
And the board.
your members come in, and like we do this big thing for teachers, and then for board members, we should do comedy dinner and dinner for board members. So we're-
Oh, now you think of that.
Now I think of like, can't pay you, I
That's
could
a
give you
great
a meal.
So we could retroactive? No, I'm sitting there thinking. Actually, people said I was gonna come. Why? I mean, it's very sweet, don't get me wrong. That your family came, but, I think I talked to her, because she thought she would come here too. But, thank you. It's a great idea if you want.
It's yeah, we'll see how things roll next year. I mean, it's like, if it's one person who's thinking, it's a little different, I don't know.
Well, no, I think you should get the same environment.
But it feels different, it just feels like three people there, it feels.
I still got 2 kids
Feels
that running bottles in the rain.
Yeah.
I know it's gonna end soon. Oh.
All right, so are we ready to start? Good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, excuse me, we're going to resume our meeting. Thank you, Dr. Hart, for your kind words for all of us. We appreciate that. And it is bittersweet, I have to say, right? Right, Jen?
Oh, goodness.
Right, Randy?
No, more sweet.
Bitter. All right, moving on. We're now open to the public. Any action items that are limited, that are on the agenda? Limited, I'm going to say that again. We're limited to action items that are on the agenda. Anyone? No? Okay. Moving on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to say thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hart, Mr. Bohm, my fellow board members. Just really, really appreciate the opportunity to serve. So thank you to the residents of Reddington as well. I can't think of any more rewarding way to spend time than to volunteer in service of our students. So thank you for this opportunity and the pleasure of getting to work with each and every one of you. So thank you.
Jen. Correspondence, there's nothing listed under correspondence. Board action. Moving on to approval of administrative reports. Can we get a motion to adopt 1.01 to 1.05?
So move that. Second, Carolyn.
Any questions about anything that anyone sees there? Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. DePinto,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Ms. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan, Mrs. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sosial,
Yes.
passes.
All right, moving on to the approval of the minutes, a motion to adopt 2.01 to 2.02.
So move that. Second, Carolyn.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. DePinto,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Ms. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sosial,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to finance and facilities, can we get a motion to adopt 3.01 to 3.07?
So move that. Second, Carolyn.
And we have a committee report. Michelle?
Me too, yes. The committee met on November 20th. Board goals were discussed, and the committee agreed the referendum, safety, and communications goals will be prioritized in future finance committee discussions. An update on the capital projects list for this year and next, including the RMS main office and nurses suite were provided. All projects are on track and estimated to be completed by January 1st. RMS student activities online payment pilot. The committee discussed various payment options for cash and checks required by state law and electronic payment, including electronic payment channels, which have set up and per use fees. The district will pilot pay schools for field trip payments through Genesis, which are compatible and sync together, offering an ease of use feature. The committee was informed that PayPal and Venmo are not a legal means of collecting payment for school districts. Pilot results will be available by April. The referendum and expiring debt topic was discussed. The architect will review the proposed referendum project list with the committee in January. The goal remains to have a referendum on a September ballot. More discussion is needed to finalize a recommendation, including the need for projected costs for referendum projects. The committee discussed the need for the state to provide a facilities waiver for an alternative toilet room in the Three Bridges School in in order to provide an accommodation for a student with special needs. Issues persist with healthcare and prescriptions back-end data discrepancies resulting in complaints that are 3 times higher than the average. The NJDA is now engaged with the district on this topic. The committee was provided an update on newspapers going out of business and the disconnect with this and the state law that requires printed notifications in businesses. No decision is needed on this topic. The committee reviewed the holiday gift drive, which is covered by donations. The bill list was reviewed and proposed agenda topics for the next meetings were discussed. The next meeting is scheduled for this Friday, December 13th at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding those minutes? Yeah.
Just quickly, when I was reading through the minutes, Pay Schools company that we use, or app, or whatever, something that I learned this year, which I'm wondering if maybe we should do a PSA sort of thing around this. The fees are very high when you're paying by credit card. And so I had contacted the business administrator's office, and I'm like, I'm trying to put money on here for lunch. And it was, I want to say like 10 or 12%. It was something really high to pay by credit card. And I wasn't sure if other parents know this, but the advice I was given was to do through banking, like an ACH withdrawal instead of through a credit card. So I just wonder if maybe that's something that we can work on communicating out. I know some of the field trips are low cost, so it wouldn't really be like an exorbitant fee, but just something to, when I saw Pace, I'm like, oh, I kept needing to, I feel like we should maybe push that information out for parents to know. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Anything else? Any other questions? Excuse me, I apologize. I'm not contagious. It's like just,
I agree with Mrs. Fiori's comment on the education around PACE schools and just ways to have less fees for student activities and for lunch. And then also just wanted to make a comment. I'm going to vote yes in support of the alternative method for 3.07, but just I always advocate for using that as a temporary fix and ensuring that we have in-classroom toilet facilities for all preschool and kindergarten for long-term.
Thank you.
great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, can we get a vote, please?
Ms. DePinto,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Ms. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Beach,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sucio.
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to Ed Tech. Can we get a motion to adopt 4.01 to 4.06?
So move that. Second, Carolyn.
And we have report.
Yes, we have minutes. The Ed Tech Committee met on November 22nd. The first item we discussed were board goals. Academic achievement obviously falls under Ed Tech. For academic achievement, the board is dedicated to creating and implementing systems and frameworks that prioritize academic success, ensuring it remains a central focus in decision-making. Suggested board action steps for the Ed Tech Committee include continue a periodic review of assessment data, comparison data from other districts, clubs that support positive learning environment, and mental health supports for students and staff. The other board goal, safety, to continue to upgrade and refine safety and security measures to ensure student and staff safety. Suggested board action items in Ed Tech include student safety education around see something, say something, surveillance and monitoring online behavior, and HIB, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. How can the board support initiatives in any way? Next, we had a quarterly tech update from Mr. Belsky. The technology projects around the district right now include a sound system, microphone, and mixer for student productions at RMS, battery backup system enhancements for temporary use during power outages, wireless access points installed by facilities team at RMS, iPads for kindergartners were refreshed, reallocate those used iPads for other uses within the district, Chromebook refreshes for sixth graders, and then those Chromebooks reallocated to other uses in the district. Staff devices are also being refreshed. Security updates to cameras and door access devices. Phone system and intercoms are now coordinated to work together. Other projects that the tech department is working on include implementing Securely Pass at RMS, placing spare Chromebooks and chargers in each RMS classroom to keep kids from going to the library to sign a Chromebook out, Network switch upgrades are upcoming. The website needs to move again to a new platform, which will be Final Site. Software security assessment is another upcoming project for the tech department. So that was a lot, but we only have those a few times a year, so Mr. Belsky covered a lot. Next, we talked about the NJSLA comparisons and follow-up. So as requested by the EdTech Committee, Ms. Pouch and Dr. Brown shared NJSLA data that they gathered from surrounding school districts' websites and those designated in the same district factor group from previous years. Their analysis showed that Reddington District is competitive among similarly sized schools. Articulation at Hunterdon Regional High School, Hunterdon Central, informs us that our students are prepared and doing well at the high school level. Science articulation meeting with Central hasn't happened yet, but there is no indication that our students are not prepared going into Central. Next, we talked about the pre and post-COVID comparison. Dr. Hart shared data of district NJSLA scores pre and post-COVID compared to state data. In English language arts, our district has recovered in every grade but grades 7 and 8. There's still work to do there, but remember we are comparable to surrounding districts in these numbers. When comparing us to the state has not recovered in any grade in English language arts. For math, our recovery has been slower, but there are several cohorts that have returned to pre-COVID levels, grades 4 and Algebra 1. The other grades are trending in the right direction. Looking at state recovery, only Algebra 2 students are back to pre-COVID testing level. Next, we talked about dyslexia handbook and updated protocols. Mrs. Beagle discussed the dyslexia handbook, which has been updated by the state. New testing and secondary screeners are being reviewed by the district. General education and intervention will be utilizing this new handbook. It will be pushed out to staff through professional development and at the March in-service. Next, we talked about preschool. Dr. Hart reported that there are no changes for the upcoming school year for preschool. There will remain 210 seats, same staffing positions and locations. Creative curriculum is now used in all preschools. Next, we talked the controversial library books. The committee discussed updating the library cataloging software so it could potentially be easier for a family to opt out of controversial library books or books with sensitive topics. The district currently notifies parents at the beginning of the school year through a letter appearing in the Genesis class that they can opt out of certain titles in the book room and discusses that there are titles in the library parents may want to review. When asked, Dr. Brown stated that only a handful of parents opt out of library materials. Typical agenda items are listed, and then our next meeting we scheduled for January 16th at 8:30.
Thank you, Ms. Fiore. Any questions about what was just discussed, read? No?
Just a comment, in addition to clubs that support positive learning environment, there was some discussion on different academic clubs, possibly STEAM related, or the National Junior Honor Society, and what the board could do to potentially support those initiatives. So just want to highlight some more of the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay, may we get a roll call, please?
Ms. DePinto,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Mrs. Bogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Sucio,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to personnel. Maybe, can we get a motion to adopt 5.01 to 5.12?
So move, Jennifer.
Second, Caroline.
And we have a committee report.
Yes. The committee met on Friday, December 6th. Oh, thank you. At 8:45 a.m. We reviewed staffing updates for 2024-2025, the Director of People Services search, enrollment updates, and visitor volunteer policies follow-up. There was also committee handbook review, where Dr. Hart reviewed the proposed committee handbook and asked members of the committee to share any feedback related to the role of the personnel committee or any aspect of the handbook. The handbook is intended to be a memorialized resource for the board to capture current learnings and practices as a lasting legacy reference for future board members to more effectively communicate responsibilities and expectations. Discussed personnel matters, and then agenda items or resignations, new hires, other leave, and green coordinators. And the next meeting is tentatively set for January 22nd, 2025 at 8:45 a.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Any questions about anything that was just brought up? Excuse me, maybe get a roll call, please?
Mrs. DePinto,
No to 5.08, yes to everything else.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Mrs. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Mrs. Bagorski,
Yes.
Ms. Wolf,
Yes.
Dr. Susia,
Yes.
passes.
Moving on to communication, can we get a motion to adopt 6.01 to 6.04?
So move that. Second, Carolyn.
And we have no committee report this time?
Yeah, we do. It's my final,
Oh, the final one, okay.
final
All right.
report. Yeah, so we met, the committee met on December 2nd. We opened the meeting by discussing the fact that various newspapers are ceasing print publication, including the Star Ledger, the Trenton Times, and the Hunterdon Democrat. Two of the three newspapers that our district uses to publicize notices are now ending print publication, which will impact our ability to comply with notice requirements. At the suggestion of Dr. Hart, committee members agree that our district should follow the lead of other districts and groups which are advocating for the legislature to take action, such as amending the law to allow for electronic publication of notices. Our options for advocacy included having the board pass a formal resolution requesting legislation, or simply having Dr. Hart write a letter to our representatives in the legislature. Of the two options, Dr. Hart believes that a formal resolution by the board would have the most impact. One member suggested that our advocacy should include encouraging the continuation of printed notice to the extent possible, particularly for more elderly members of the community, and allowing local newspapers to serve as candidates for print publications, even if the readership count levels are too low to qualify under the existing law. And I see since the meeting, there's a resolution on the agenda tonight which captures that. Next, the Strauss policy table of contents. We next discuss using our policy table of contents as a starting point for the policy review process that is being planned by the committee. The table of contents identifies the policy, the date it was last updated, and whether the policy is mandated. In a minute, I'm going to talk about the protocols for the policy review that we also discussed. But we next discussed the committee handbook. Mrs. Wolf just mentioned that was also discussed at the Personnel Committee. Dr. Hart shared with us a draft of a committee handbook he developed, which he did not present to the recent board member orientation, which had been that morning because he wanted the committee members to first review the draft before finalizing it. And so the handbook will include information about how each committee operates, how often the committee meets, its expertise and responsibilities, the representation on each committee, responsibilities of the committee chair. Committee members agreed the handbook would be a helpful document to have and that it should be used in the future for onboarding new board members. Dr. Hart stated that he would bring the draft of the handbook to the other committees for their input. Onboarding survey results. We next discussed the results of the recent survey, which board members were asked to fill out about their experiences with the onboarding process when they were new members. According to the survey results, board members' first-year experiences were relatively positive, and responses indicate that the written onboarding materials given to them had been helpful. One of the suggestions was to have training on Robert's Rules of Order, and Dr. Hart indicated that a training session on Robert's Rules was tentatively scheduled for March. Based on the survey results, Dr. Hart also suggested having an additional new member orientation in January, along with a mid-year check-in with new members around June. He also suggested bringing back a mentoring program for new members. So next we discuss the protocol for the policy review. After reviewing the table of contents, policy table of contents, we talked further about the protocol that should be followed for the review of district policies. Dr. Hart brought up the prospect of the board establishing a governance committee at the upcoming reorg meeting, and that if such a committee were established, it could be responsible for reviewing policies and identifying ones that should be revised. However, committee members felt that even if the board did decide to establish a governance committee, the responsibility for reviewing policies and identifying ones to be revised should remain with the policy committee. We next discussed the specific protocols for the review of policies. After hearing suggestions from Dr. Hart, the general consensus was reached on the following protocol. Each committee member would be assigned a set of policies to look at, perhaps 5 to 10 per member, with each member to then decide which policies to recommend for review or revisions at the next committee meeting. Dr. Hart suggested creating a rubric for the review of policies, such as how recent the policy was updated, the philosophy behind the policy, and how other districts address the policy. Dr. Hart suggested that this review process not begin until after the reorg meeting, when the policy committee membership has been set, and this will allow him time to draft the suggested protocols for the review of policies. Next, we discuss wellness policy, which is policy 8505. We consider the updates to this policy. After reviewing the policy with the Green Committee over the past several months and reviewing requirements for the Sustainable Jersey for Schools application, the policy is being updated to better reflect how the school district encourages health foods and physical activity. The updates include statements such as promoting inquiry involving nutrition and food, and supporting a recess period at the middle school, which is now in the schedule, encouraging field trips that promote physical activity, harvesting garden food for the cafeteria, promoting other outdoor lessons, and supporting physical activity and aftercare through the YMCA. These revisions position the district to possibly achieve additional points in the Sustainable Jersey application. Dr. Hart mentioned that the application is underway now and is due in June. In response to a committee member's question, Dr. Hart noted that our green coordinator does not have to be a district employee, and in the past was a person the district hired at an hourly rate who had a background in green initiatives or sustainability. We next discussed the school calendar revision for this year. Dr. Hart presented the revised school calendar, which is on the agenda for tonight. This is because due to the schools being closed on November 11th because of the power outages, that day will now be made up on January 20th. After the board approves the revision tonight, an official notice will be sent out to families reminding them of the change. Also, given those recent power outages, Dr. Hart noted that the purchase of generators has been added to the referendum. He also noted that JCP&L has upgraded our district from a level 2 priority to a level 1. So now we're on the same priority level for restoring power as hospitals. Next, we discussed an update on the cell phone policy. Dr. Hart reported that Mr. Charleston has begun researching the issues and engaging stakeholders, including talking to children and parents. He plans to be able to report back to the committee by late winter or early spring. So tonight, the agenda items, the wellness policy, the school calendar revision, and the resolution regarding the print publications. The next meeting was scheduled for January 23rd at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Pete. Excuse me. Any questions regarding what we just heard? May we get a roll call, please?
Ms. DePinto,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Mrs. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Mrs. Barborski,
Yes.
Mrs. Wall,
Yes.
Dr. Sosell,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Dr. Hart, did you read him to the tentative board meeting dates?
I
Did
think,
you copy to everybody?
yeah, everybody should have a copy that was at your seat of tentative board meeting dates for calendar year 2025. Generally, we try to keep board meetings pretty consistent with the second Tuesday of the month. There are some exceptions, but these are a draft right now. And once the new board sits after reorg in January, they will be finally approved. If there's any revision or any discussion that any members of the board would like to have regarding the dates, we can have that now or even
via email after this meeting, but they do need to be finally approved at reorg as well. And I can provide all of you a copy as well. They're tentative right now, but they'll likely be approved in January. So you have them. Are there any questions about the tentative meeting dates? Any concerns with any of the dates that are listed thus far? No? Okay. All right. Unless I hear anything via email from any members of the board, these dates will likely appear on the reorg agenda as well.
Okay, okay, moving on to new business from the board. There was a Green Committee meeting, so we have some minutes on that, Ms. Stewart.
Yes, we do. The Green Committee met on November 21st. The first thing we discussed, strategic focus for the 24-25 school year. Mr. Bohm referred to the strategic focus document, which lists the 3 pillars of Green Ribbon schools and shows our 24-25 goals associated with each pillar. The next item we discussed, Prince George's County Public Schools Climate Action Plan. Actually, when I attended the workshop down in Atlantic City, I spoke with a member of the Prince George's County Board of Education and discussed a plan that their district was using that basically laid out all their goals going forward. And I brought that as an example for our district, just something we can look towards if we felt we wanted to go down that road for action items to go forward in the future. The committee discussed using this document as a framework to plan out future green initiatives and long-term goals. Next, for Pillar 2, reduce environmental impact and costs. We talked about the referendum public forum and invited the Green Committee members to attend the forum on December 3rd. Mr. Bohm gave us a solar array expansion update. The project is moving forward and construction will begin once permits are acquired, likely in the spring. The timing of this project could not be more perfect, as the district was notified that the New Jersey School Boards Association ACES savings program could not negotiate a cost savings to districts. So the district will have to pay the utility rate for electricity at a drastic increase beginning in June 2025. Mr. Bohm also gave us an update on the electric school buses. The committee notified the committee that the district's first electric school bus has arrived, or will be arriving when we have this past meeting.
Yep.
The anticipated date to begin service is January 2025. The electric charger has been installed. Training has already begun for the facility and transportation departments. Communication and rollout for this bus will be discussed in the Finance Committee. For Pillar 3, improve the health and wellness of school students and staff. Mr. Bohm shared the links to the newsletters and Genesis blasts that pertain to sustainability efforts in the district. This is part of our communications plan. Next, we talked about the 4th grade field trip. This is not a car here, we went home for the night. Ms. Pouch gave an overview of the new 4th grade field trip that was created by the Township's Water Watch Committee. This was in collaboration with RBCC. This was an idea pitched by Mrs. Adhikari in a previous Green Committee. Students walked the Lackameyer Trail and stopped at 4 stations that were manned by RBCC students. Students will return in the spring to the same trail to compare their findings. Special thanks to Mrs. Pouch, Mrs. Adhikari, Mrs. Orlandi, Mrs. Fuselbush, Mrs. Fiore, and Mr. Bornmacher, as well as the students from RBCC for making this trip such a success. Next, we talked capital projects update and an IRS tax credit. Mr. Bohm shared a slideshow of capital projects completed by the district that align with sustainability goals, including the RMS main office, nurse's office, the White House School art room, and the White House School preschool playground. Mr. Bohm also informed the committee that as a result of a flyer that Mrs. Fiore brought back from the school board's workshop in Atlantic City, the district was able to apply for an IRS tax credit on several completed capital projects. This equates to a savings of at least $50,000 for the district if it's accepted by the IRS. For Pillar 3, provide environmental education. Our Sustainable Jersey recertification is coming up. Dr. Hart reported that the leadership team is working on the recertification application. for a sustainable jersey for schools. And this is due in the spring, although I think it might be summer. I think there's a big window of when that.
It is.
Yeah.
There's several like checkpoints you can submit in January, March, and I think June or July. Yeah, periodically.
For the another sustainable jersey, a $2,000 grant. Dr. Higgins gave us an update. TBS has received this grant for sustainable jersey for a traffic garden. This is sort of like an outdoor project where the students can drive through and learn about the rules of the road, or walk through, whatever. I'm not sure how they're getting through it, but this project was in partnership with Go Hunterdon. Next, RMS Sustainable Jersey $10,000 grant. Mr. Charleston mentioned that RMS received a grant for $10,000 for an Eco Action News student-led project. We discussed that wellness policy that was then brought over to policy, that was wellness policy 8505, which will help with our sustainable jersey recertification. And then Dr. DeRosa at White House School shared that White House School is participating in Empowered Schools, which brings STEM and energy savings initiatives to the school. Next, Mr. Bohm shared the link to curriculum documents for RMS's new Encore classes that pertain to sustainability and green career pathways. He also mentioned there are many after-school clubs that students can participate in, which align with green initiatives. Student Climate Challenge, I had just updated the committee as I was looking on Sustainable Jersey's website that there is a student-led Student Climate Challenge if any of the it would be RMS age group were interested in participating. And then in terms of unfinished and new business, Mr. Foster, a community member on the committee, praised the work of the staff and committee and said that he supports communicating this information out to the township committee and the wider community. We talked about the state grant for the 2 electric buses. Mrs. Betterman had asked about the timeline for the NJDEP grant for the 2 additional buses totaling $640,000. These are being discussed in finance. Mr. Zwirling, another community member, reported that the district did an energy audit about 10 years ago and suggested it would be good to see about reviewing our progress and completing another one if possible. Mr. Zwirling also asked about the green coordinator position, if there were interested candidates, and Mr. Bohm shared that the position was revamped, but it remains unfilled to date. And then we scheduled our next green committee, will be February 20th.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions about anything that came up? All right, moving on to the formation of the Governments Committee. Dr. Hart?
So the Policy and Communications Committee has discussed the potential formation of an additional committee called a Governance Committee. And this is related to our governance goal, the board's governance goal. In addition to the committee handbook, I spoke with a neighboring, maybe not neighboring district, but a district nearby that has a governance committee about what the responsibilities might be. And tentatively, I'll just outline briefly some of the things that we thought a governance committee could do. It would meet every other month or maybe quarterly, kind of like the Green Committee functions. It would be responsible to make recommendations to the board for adoption of new or revised bylaws, policies, or board regulations, and maybe even elimination of policies and regulations to promote efficiency of the board, monitor regulations and administrative directives to ensure they're in compliance with the existing policies, make recommendations to the board for action concerning activity in the district where we might need to propose a new bylaw, policy, or regulation, hear any sort of potential grievances or issues that may come to the board, monitor board member completion of the superintendent evaluation, board self-evaluation, assist the board president and vice president with training and onboarding of new Board of Education members, and ensure that the board's work really is aligned to board goals, district goals, and strategic planning. So it would almost be a committee within the board to just ensure that the board's operations remain focused on goals, strategic work, and adhering to our bylaws and policies. So the question before the board, as we consider reorg after the first of the year, is this something that we'd like to establish on the reorg agenda? Is it something that we feel like is necessary at this point? And if we want to establish this committee, I don't think there's anything that in our bylaws that prevent us from establishing it beyond reorg, but if we could, correct, Jason, I think we could establish it at any point. But if we want to start the new calendar year with this committee established and assign some work, that's the question in front of the board at this point. And the floor is open for discussion, deliberation about a need for an additional committee. By the way, potential members of this committee, doesn't have to be, but would be the board president, vice president, the chair of the policy committee, and then just an at-large board member, as well as the district administration.
I say absolutely.
Easy for you to say, right?
Yes, of course. No, what does at-large board member mean?
Anybody, just any board member, just a selected board member that may have interest. So
Who's currently on the board?
correct. So it would be board members. So in addition to when the board president asks for committee interest of committees, we would know with that proposal, of course, anything could be changed. We would know the board president, vice president would serve on the committee. The chair of the policy committee would also serve on this committee. And then any other board member that might express interest to the board president could potentially serve.
Any thoughts?
I have a question. The scope that you just described, all of those items are currently being done somewhere, right? There's nothing new that this group would do. Is that correct?
I think you're probably correct. It wouldn't be anything new. A lot of bylaw policy and regulation revision all happens in the Policy Communications Committee. Adhering to timelines like the superintendent evaluation and the board self-evaluation is generally reinforced by the board president and vice president. Non-contractual grievances or issues that may come up. An example of that might be the sick bank trustees has been established. The bargaining unit for the teachers does say that if a grievance reaches the board level, that a committee of the board may hear that grievance, and that committee I would recommend to the board could be the personnel committee because they handle personnel matters. I think the only thing that might be a little bit different that's outside the scope of just typical board work is onboarding new board members and participating in that, but board president and vice president generally are at the table and assist with onboarding new board members. Yep, you're welcome.
Any other thoughts about that?
Sure. Some of the initial conversation around it was to try to leave the board better off than it was when we arrived, to make sure that we're handing down information as boards turn over. But then some of that work we were able to get ahead of in policy committee this year with sending out onboarding surveys to learn about board members' experiences, to see how that could be improved. Updating the concept of a mentoring program, putting together a board committee handbook, and sort of memorializing some of the things that we learn as we go into documents that can be shared and handed down internally. So those were all ideas along with the governance committee that were initially floated to say, let's bring that to the board as a whole to get feedback for what to then move forward with. So I just wanted to share like where it came from initially and the intent of it.
Agreed, yeah.
And then finding out if it's something that the board members would find helpful or not, and then finding the right homes for, just to ensure that this has the time and space to happen.
Thank you, Jen. Any other thoughts about that?
I'll just share a perspective. Forming a new committee would mean that time from the business administrator would be utilized because you have to write an agenda, and then time from this group, and I'm assuming that you would sit on it as well, Dr. Hart. So I'm hearing an investment of time for things that are already done in other parts of the current structure. What's not clear to me is what's the benefit, aside from what you just shared around like the hand down, which I think we can handle. So based on what's been shared, I'm not hearing that there's the return will be offset by the investment of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with what Michelle said, and also I agree with what Michelle said, and also my concern is it would be another committee that people would have to sit on. So now I think by and large, most of the board members are on two committees. This could potentially make a third. And most board members have lives outside of the board as well. A lot of board members are working full-time, and I'm not hearing what the return is for that extra time, especially since, as you said, all these, everything that this new committee might, pertain to is already being done, so. Why do it again?
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, that's actually a nice segue. There's something I'd like to add. It's not on the agenda as far as new business. Hold on a minute. And thinking about exactly what we're talking about, which is this transfer of new board members. I think the handbook is really a great thing. Obviously, it's going to be very helpful to people, so that's a great idea. It certainly helps with communication. I appreciate Jen's sentiments at the beginning. I also want to say that it's been an honor serving on the Board of Ed. I've enjoyed working with each of you. Honestly, I respect what you do, and this is a lot of time. I'm really happy the new board members are here tonight also. You see what you're in for, right, people? But it's really been a pleasure to do this. Of course, I'm personally committed to the field of education in my entire life and career. But I thank you. So in thinking about this transfer, I don't know if in the recent past, certainly not in the recent past, has there been both the president and the vice president are not going to be on the new board. So therefore, I hope people are, it's not my business, honestly, but I hope people have been thinking about, the next step, who the president and vice president will be. So that's up to you guys to think about it. But in thinking about that, again, this transfer, I took a few minutes to just jot down some notes about maybe the role of the president and vice president. And this is just like a work in progress. And I would be happy to share it with you. Dr. Hart contributed some resources, et cetera, but this is just a little draft. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes to go through that. It won't take very long at all. And I appreciate your time listening to this. And just again, think about if it's something that you want to consider being the president or vice president. But the board president, you can expect to spend anywhere from 4 to 6 hours a week, beyond that of a typical board member, on various matters related to the board business. At times during the school year, it could be a little less, it could be a little more. The primary duties, of course, chairing the Board of Ed meetings, are reviewing the board agenda in advance of the agenda being published, on questions and consult. You might question and consult with the superintendent regarding, and the BA regarding the draft agenda. You also chair the negotiations committee. Right now, the negotiation meetings are in person in the afternoon, and usually they go well into the night. Currently, the RTEA is in year 2 of a 5-year contract, and the RTAA is in year 1 of a 3-year contract. So they were successfully completed, which is great. Also, the board president gathers information regarding committees. As you recall, a year ago, I personally like making phone calls. That's how I did it. The new board president will do it the way they want to do it. But I personally think it's important to get input as to what committee people want to be on. And you contact working with the vice president and the superintendent to make committee assignments. But ultimately, the president is the one who assigns board members to committees. Also, president attends and presents at new board member orientation with the vice president, the superintendent, and the business administrator. The board president also coordinates the board office holiday breakfast, which some of you are able to attend, and we appreciate that.
Thank you for that. That was very
Oh,
nice. Yeah, that was
absolutely.
good.
No, that's a nice thing that's kind of a tradition. Also attends graduation and delivers a graduation message to students, and hopefully it's not too hot. Remember that? Yes. But that's always a wonderful day. Who doesn't enjoy graduation? Attends the welcome back in September and delivers an address to the faculty and staff. And I appreciate, Jen going. I was not able to make those, so Jen was very helpful with a lot of things. Develops a working relationship with the superintendent, regards the superintendent as an equal, and the district's long-term leader and top professional, of course. Maintains availability for phone calls from the superintendent. Also, you write a yearbook message for the Hollenbrook and the RMS yearbooks. Coordinates and facilitates the superintendent evaluation process. As you know, that's a big job for everybody. Everyone's a lot of input. Consults with the vice president to collate the evaluation ratings and comments for board review. Also consults the board vice president regarding issues that are brought to the president's attention. So Jen and I do want to comment. I've really enjoyed working with you, Jen, honestly. We've had a lot of laughs, haven't we? We've had a great year though, which I'll highlight a few things in a minute, but it's been quite a year. And, but I've really appreciated working with you. Honestly, your feedback and just the communication has been very helpful, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. You have a great way of looking at things, and that's been extremely helpful to me. So I think that's also really important, is that relationship, of course, between president and vice president. Makes contact with individual board members regarding any issues where other board members might need further information. Hears all voices of the board members and builds consensus. I also, of course, feel strongly about that. I think everybody's voice matters, and it's important for everyone to feel they have a voice at the table. Consults the board attorney regarding opinions needed for the board. That's a fun piece, of course, but it's part of the job, and I think it's important. Well, that's just another important piece. Also, craft communication and press releases on behalf of the board when necessary, certifies payrolls for employees, signs documents such as bond issues, warrants for payment, architectural drawings, contracts, etc., writes letters to retiring staff members and awardees, which I'm still working on. I know there's those 3 people that were recognized for the Teacher of the Year, so we're gonna be taking care of that as well, writing them letters for their file. And then some resources again that Dr. Hart had contributed. Regarding the vice president, the time commitment, you can expect to spend at least 2 to 4 hours a week beyond that of a typical board member in various matters related to the board business. And at times that could be more or less that amount. Primary duties, chairs the Board of Education meetings in absence of the board president, consults with the board president, attends graduation and delivers the graduation message in the absence of the board president, attends the welcome back in September, and like Jen did, and delivers an address to the faculty staff in the absence of the board president, and assists the board president in the superintendent evaluation. So that's just kind of, again, a summary. I'd be happy to, if you're interested in sending that out to you guys so you have it. But this is all part of the transition. In talking about the board governance, I agree with what you're saying. I don't know if it really does make sense to have another full committee. It's just my 2 cents. But I think that, I'm really confident the board is in great hands moving forward. And again, I congratulate the 3 new people coming on board. And it's a great, great people. This is a great district, as I said from the very beginning. It's a very well-run district. I've appreciated working closely with you, Dr. Hart, as well.
Thank you.
And of course, Jason Bohm is just phenomenal, as you know, business administrator. This district is in very good hands. So I just wanted to add that and just mention that to you guys. All right. Any questions about, again, I hope people are thinking about it and having your own conversations. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, we'll move on. All right.
Is
Yeah.
there a requirement for how long you have to be on the board to be eligible to be board president?
I don't believe there is.
No.
No. I think anyone is eligible. You just have to get voted by the other members.
I'll just add, Camille, you mentioned the resources that I
Yes.
sent to you. On the school board's website, if anybody is interested, take a look at some of the resources when it talks about the role of the board president. I thought that they were pretty helpful and comprehensive, just in terms of, knowing Robert's rules of order, running meetings, chairing meetings, and those sorts of things. So school boards is a good resource for that.
Okay. I'm sure it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on. We are now open to the public for anything. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I add
Yeah.
new business real quick?
Yes.
An update from NJSBA. 2 things. So I attended the county meeting in December. I just wanted to let everyone know Dr. Hart was one of the co-speakers at the event. He did a fantastic job representing our district as always. The topic was professional development, curriculum, and achievement, I believe.
Professional development, yeah, something like that. Yeah, achievement, yep.
So it was just a very interesting and wonderful night, and it helped me remember how lucky we are to have Dr. Hart as the head of our district.
New board members were there too, I
Yes,
should say.
new board
I
members
think
were
all
there.
3 of you were there in
Yeah.
the orientation prior to the meeting and dinner too.
I think it's fantastic that they invited new board
Yeah.
members. It was very well attended, so
And
it was nice.
Ellen was there too.
So the one takeaway that I wanted to mention, or 2 takeaways, one, the new board member orientation, they have that orientation weekend, but the spaces are limited. So I know that they had mentioned it to the new board members that I think it was only 2 per district that would be able to participate in that. The county meetings in the wintertime are all gonna be virtual, so they just wanted to spread the word that you're welcome to attend any county meetings that look of interest to you for the January and February meetings, to sign up for those. And then I think that was it from the county meeting, but I also attended the delegate assembly. I did the virtual to listen to what kind of legislative and policy resolutions were put forth. I did want to mention that the print media versus electronic media was one of the resolutions that it actually passed. So I'm just going to read, LOPATCom, Board of Education in Warren County, proposed new policy language to be incorporated into the NJSBA Manual of Positions and Policies, supporting the publication of board meeting notices electronically rather than publication in 2 newspapers as is currently required by law. I think we had mentioned that there are several districts in Warren County that are also out of compliance. They have no local papers to advertise in. So the resolutions committee had recommended passing this resolution, and it did pass. So school boards will be advocating and trying to, legislators, so they're on it. Just wanted to
Okay,
get everyone's
that's good.
update on that. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Ken. Anyone else for new business at all? Anybody? All right. We are now open to the public for anything on or off the agenda. All right, can we get a motion to move to executive session to adopt the following resolution in accordance with Sunshine Law, to discuss a student matter for approximately 30 minutes, at which time the board expects to return to public session where action may be taken. The matters discussed will be made public if and when the circumstances requiring confidentiality no longer exist. However, it is not presently known when such circumstances will exist.
So move that.
Second, Carol.
Maybe get a roll call, please.
Ms. DeVinto.
Yes.
Ms. Fiore.
Yes.
Peter Lopes.
Yes.
Ms. Menzer.
Yes.
Mr. Peach.
Yes.
Ms. Jaworski.
Yes.
Ms. Wolf.
Yes.
Dr. Seziola.
Yes. Thanks,
Bye.
thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have
You
a
as
good
well.
holiday.
You as well.